Good morning again, and on behalf of our panel, I'd like to thank the organizers for including this session on spirituality. Over the past 24 hours, we have assembled the tesserae, or the pieces of a beautiful mosaic, one that invites us to reflect on fundamental questions. Quid est homo? What constitutes the human? Quis est homo? Who is the human person? What does it mean to be human? Questions about personhood, identity, and dignity. We've heard fascinating insights from recent research. Listening to these incredible scientific contributions reminds us how rapidly the world of science is evolving, and how these advances bring with them complex and often challenging ethical questions. There are no easy answers. These sessions have also been enriched by yesterday's reflection on filmmaking and the engineering of life. We saw how science and the art of filmmaking share a sense of curiosity, creativity, and maybe even playfulness. We've seen how both art and science challenge us to move beyond the boundaries of what feels safe and familiar. Today, together with different diverse perspectives, this panel will offer a reflection on the contribution of spirituality to the dialogue. Our contribution also has a very practical dimension. We want to explore especially how through spirituality we can support people, especially in moments of vulnerability. Spirituality invites us to have a supernatural view of reality, to recognize with humility and honesty that there is something more to the human person than what we can grasp. In a recent address, Pope Leo XIV quoted C.K. Chesterton, who wrote, "Take away the supernatural, and what remains is the unnatural." We're going to begin with 5 brief reflections, followed by a time for questions. Our first speaker is Professor Amir Dziri, Professor of Islamic Studies at the University of Fribourg, and co-director of the Swiss Center for Islam and Society since 2017. His research focuses on Islamic tradition in relation to contemporary philosophical, ethical, and societal issues. He has extensive experience in interfaith dialogue, and today he will address us on the topic, Muslim spiritual care as an opportunity for a new Islamic ethic.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to share some thoughts with you, and also thank you very much for gathering this different people together. It's a great honor being here, and I would like to share some thoughts with you in about 8 minutes. My idea is to start with very concrete field that develops right now, which is Muslim spiritual care, and then going from this very concrete issue to more fundamental questions. And I would like also to raise some questions where that resonates hopefully also within the panel, but also with the audience. And my idea is to have spirituality as a red thread of this short presentation. So the main question I would like to address right now is, what is the spiritual in spiritual care, in Muslim spiritual care, so specifically in Muslim spiritual care, but also more generally in spiritual care. And my hypothesis would be that if you want to make a strong argument for spirituality and the need of spirituality, we need to address what we mean by spirituality in a much more precise way, and we also have to show the benefits of spirituality. So I would just perhaps share with you some recent information about the establishment of Muslim spiritual care in Western countries as well. There is also a certain tradition in Muslim countries, but there's a recent development of establishing Muslim spiritual care in different Western countries, Northern American, European, but also European. You can identify this establishment by the creation of jobs and positions in several institutions like hospitals or prisons or other facilities. There's an increasing academic production of literature which treats the development of Muslim spiritual care. There are some more theoretical approaches, but there are also some empirical approaches. And then there's also a professionalization of organizational structures within Muslim communities who organize Muslim spiritual care. And then we have a certain focus on hospital spiritual care. This is just a result of the main fundamental issue of spiritual care, trying to help people in distress and in need. But there's also a kind of specialization of the fields. For example, there's a specific spiritual care developing in asylum centers, in prisons, in emergency cases, or also in the military. So I think it started all with hospital spiritual care, but now it specializes and becomes much more specific. I think one main tension, inherent tension that is a reality of Muslim spiritual care, but as well as of other approaches to spiritual care, is this tension between ethical openness and ethical commitment. So on the one hand, you have the personal motivation and the personal commitment to certain values, and on the other hand, you have to stay open for other ethical commitments from persons, patients you are dealing with. And I think this is a very important inherent tension that is still valid for today. We see it especially in the way how persons perceive themselves. So we have the traditional imam who interacts in giving spiritual care, and then you have the caregivers who insist that they do not have the same role as the imam. They are not a formal representation of Islam, and they understand their role more as someone who listens, who's not in a way of judging certain kind of behavior of Muslim patients. So this is a main tension that also affects the organization of spiritual care in institutions like hospitals, where you have more neutral, universal approaches against more community-based chaplaincy. And I think this is there are different models applied right now in different European contexts. The questions that are raising from this situation is how you can reconcile between these different positionings of personal ethical commitment and universal ethical openness, but also from a theological point of view, how you can accept non-formal and non-orthodox positions and life experience within or as a part of theological authority. So how to integrate different life experiences. Third question is, do we have to have more specialization in Muslim spiritual care, or do we need such an approach that is called one size fits all, which is, for example, applied especially in the Netherlands, where the education for spiritual caregivers is much more open. You do not need any kind of religious or theological background. And then there's also an institutional question. You have some kind of institutional logics, operational logics, economic imperatives, and then you have the idea of being very open to relationships between the caregivers and the patients that are not forced by these kind of operational logics. Then I would like to share some thoughts about the term of spirituality, which is very difficult, obviously very difficult to grasp and to define. There are different approaches coming also from different disciplines. In philosophy, usually transcendent philosophy, you have mainly three criteria to define spirituality. It is first to say that there is something which goes beyond the material dimension of the human being. Second, that the human being has access to this dimension which is not material. And third criteria would be that there is a kind of unity, cosmological unity, where the human being can be part of this spiritual dimensions. So in transcendent philosophy, these are mainly the main criteria to define spirituality. In theology, I think the main point is here that you link this possibility of being part of cosmological unity to more specific idea of higher principle of being, if you wanted to define it quite open, or you can also say to God or to a certain kind of divinity. In science theory, it's also interesting. So there's also a discussion about a reductionist, empiricist approach and to overcome a post-metaphysical scientific paradigm. And in the medical field, is also interesting. There, the idea of spirituality is mentioned in 1984 in recommendations from the World Health Organization to say health and healing process is more than just taking care of the physical well-being of a human being. So there, the idea is that spirituality compensates or adds to the physical well-being. And I would just like to conclude with some questions, also, as I said, for the panel, but also for the discussion afterwards with the audience. What I realized, for example, running through a lot of literature, theological, philosophical, treating spirituality, that there are some kind of narratives or that repeats all the time. The one is, for example, to complain about a reductionist approach, and on the other hand, to pretend that there is a need of to consider the holistic nature of humans. That there is a violation against human dignity if we do not consider this spiritual dimension, or that the human being needs access to the realm of the divine or the sacred. So these are very common narratives, but I would also say that there's a need to be more precise and to address also the exact issues. So what is the issues of those voting or argumenting for this spiritual dimension that they are concerned with in an empiricist world. And is it a matter of methodology? Is it a matter of values, of belief, or both, or just one of them? And how to avoid binary, simplistic labeling of addressing such issues, because it is very easy to get into a very binary discussion. And then the last point is, what is the actual benefit if we make the argument for spirituality? What is the benefit for the human being, for society, Is it salvation, healing, happiness, justice, fulfillment, saving money? So there are a lot of questions. What is the actual benefit of spirituality? And I would just like to raise these questions, and I'm very curious discussing these with all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, and I'm sure we'll come back to these questions later. We're going to move on now to hear Professor Andrea Genazzani, who is a professor emeritus of obstetrics and gynecology and former department director of the university at the University of Pisa. He has held leadership roles in various organizations, including serving as president of the European Society of Gynecology, and he is the recipient of multiple honorary degrees and remains quite active in the international scientific community. He will speak today about spirituality in Jewish law.
Dear friends, dear colleagues, thank you very much. It's for I first of all to put who I am. I am a Jew, but I have no other degree in Judaism. I have not made any theological school. I was only educated in a family. I crossed the Shoah. I was saved by an Italian friend of my mother who take me for 1 year and a half. Since when the American, they went to Florence, and then from the country she bring back me to my mother after 1 year and a half, and I was saved. And I was educated in Judaism, I was telling you, and also what is fundamental is in Judaism that each individual have a personal responsibility and relationship with God Creator. And this makes, we don't have intermediate. We are educated in the law, we are educated on the basis what is our action to do, but everything is analyzed in an open-mind way. We have not the truth, only God has the truth. But we have the passion, the destiny, the destination to try to discover, at least partially, what it is possible during my life. And we have to take it according to certain rules. What is the Jewish law? The word is derived from the Hebrew root that means to go or to walk. It's the collective body of Jewish religious law, including the biblical law, where 613 mitzvot or commandments exist, and the later Talmudic and Rabbinic law as customs and tradition. In principle, the halakhic literature is composed of two divisions: the written law, the Torah, the first 5 books of the scripture, which are the origin of authority, and the dominant parts of the oral law, who are the Mishnah, the Talmud, the post-Talmudic code, and the responsa. I would like to start from the home message at the second ICEEL. We were discussing about genetic engineering. Genetic engineering are permissible in Judaism when used for the treatment or prevention of diseases. Such genetic manipulation is not considered to be a violation of God's natural law. And the second message was that the Judaism rejects the idea of creating a more valuable person through genetic engineering because it does not put a relative value of human life. The third message that I left last time was that Judaism do not permit the alteration or manipulation of physical traits and characteristics such as the head, the eye, and the hair color, facial features, and the like, when such a change provides no useful benefit to mankind, and eugenics is forbidden. According to Halakha, human beings serve as partner with God in the creation process, but do not have absolute autonomy in utilizing medical intervention. Specific halakhic guidelines delineate when patient autonomy is followed or when a Jew must submit to God's law. What is the spirituality in halakha? Halakha, the Jewish law, is often perceived as a detailed system of rules governing daily life. yet beneath its legal structure lies a profound spiritual vision. Halakha is not merely about external compliance. It is a framework designed to sanctify human existence and cultivate an ongoing relationship between the individual and God. At its core, halakha transforms ordinary action, eating, working, speaking, and resting, into opportunities for spiritual elevation. Through blessing, ethical obligation, and ritual precision, daily life becomes infused with awareness of the divine. This integration prevents spirituality from being confined to moments of prayer or study. Instead, it permeates every aspect of life. Spirituality in halakha is also expressed through kavanah, which is the intentionality. While actions are central, their spiritual depth is enhanced when performed with mindfulness and inner devotion. Halakha values the harmony between deed and intention, recognizing that structured practice can shape the heart and refine character. Furthermore, halakha fosters spiritual discipline and moral growth. By setting boundaries and obligation, it guides individuals beyond personal impulse toward responsibility, compassion, and self-transcendence. In this way, halakha nurtures a spirituality rooted not in abstraction, but in lived commitment and ethical action. And ultimately, halakha presents a vision of spirituality that is embodied, consistent, and enduring. It teaches that holiness is not found by escaping the world, but by engaging it thoughtfully, transforming everyday life into a sacred encounter. And by these words, I would like to go now on my daily life, because how we can participate in that spirituality which is surrounding ourselves. And going on the Talmud and on the Torah, when Eve take the apple and give it to Adam, this was the moment when we started our capacity of recognizing the truth or looking about the truth. This was already existing from the beginning. The human history was characterized by that fact that human curiosity was stimulating the capacity to know what it is, the truth, what it is, what are our obligations. And when Adam discovered himself nude, he had that perception of reality. This was the beginning of the doubt. We don't have an artificial intelligence guiding us to better understand. But we started with the doubt, and we started with the necessity to know better and to know more in deep what is the reality surrounding ourselves. The dignity of human science is written in the book. We are here to help, not to help, to understand what it is. Our truth of today will not be the truth of tomorrow. And the connection and the role of science is that our discoveries are only capacity to know what is already existing and to know each better. Certainly, from Leonardo da Vinci time perception of reality to the modern one, the distance is immense. And if you believe what in the young brain of a young human now, how we achieve to absorb the discoveries already done from our past until now, and how this is different from the past, and what it will be in 100 years from now, even more. You understand that this is part of our spirituality and our capacity by that one to understand that our capacity of knowledge is limited by the time, but with the future time, we will grow more and more again. For this, we need to have a strong engagement in investigation and research. For this, the doubt about the truth is fundamental for the Jewish life. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Genazzani, for introducing us to this Jewish understanding of law, and especially spirituality, and especially this idea that spiritual vision goes beyond rules. And you've introduced us to that very beautifully today. We'll move on now to our third speaker, Professor Guido Giordano, who is a full professor at Roma Tre University with a background in health sciences. He's active in Soka Gakkai International, promoting peace, dialogue, and personal empowerment. And he supports community initiatives in Italy, especially emphasizing human dignity and social harmony. And today he's going to focus on the theme Buddhism and bioethics.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning to everybody. It's a great pleasure to be here with this distinguished panelist. Thank you for inviting me here. This is my third experience from the very beginning, where we were just actually within and just out of COVID in the first ICEEL conference. And I really would like to greatly acknowledge and appreciate this effort, which I find it amazing, truly inspiring. I think Don Renzo Bagoraro and Professor Ralph Stutzky have made a venue which is unique. We were discussing at the coffee break that actually this kind of environment, this kind of depth in discussion does not usually happen in academic environments. So, and this is of course the value of these moments. So, well, my background is actually in not in health science. I'm a geologist. So. But thank you very much. That's okay. That's okay. So I'm like Professor Genazzani. I'm not obviously an academic in religious studies, but I'm a practitioner and part of the external relation of the Soka Gakkai Institute, the Italian section, and that's why I will talk about the Buddhist perspective about these two major questions that are quid est homo, and bringing the perspective of Soka Gakkai, which is like in any big religious tradition, one of the many. So Buddhism has the root is in the teachings of the historical Buddha Shakyamuni, who lived 2,500 years ago, more or less, and then these tradition that I will be talking about. The common roots are clearly evident in every single tradition. Nietzsche and the Shonin in the 13th century made this school, this tradition focused on the sutra, the Lotus Sutra, which is probably the main teaching of Shakyamuni, which is about the supreme dignity of human beings. That's the simple thing. In terms of what could be interesting in answering those questions, what can Buddhism offer, which could be interesting? Well, first of all, that according to Buddhism, nothing exists by itself. Everything is in relationship with something else. So, human beings, we do exist. The definition if we want to define what is a human being, we need to see the relationship with the universal life. That's the point. And the universal life is this one. Everyone. We are here. We are the universal life. We are expression of this. And this is the narrative of this is about this common and forever existing life, from which our individual existence sometimes, appear in the process of birth and disappear in the process of death, but still the universal life existed. So everything is actually a transformation. That's the, and you can see also the resonance with some Greek philosopher, the idea that pantarei is there. The main reason for Buddhists to argument about human being is, where it stems, the enlightenment of Shakyamuni is about sufferance. What is sufferance? Why do we suffer in life? What is about? And essentially, the sufferance exists. Simple as that. Is part of life. So as much as enlightenment and darkness are coexisting, so the main point is about the choice. The main point is about the responsibility. The main point is about how can we access a wisdom that allows us to perceive what is the meaning of life and give a direction to what we do. And I think that today we have been, and yesterday we have been raising a series of very important questions about where do we want to go with the present and with the future. How can we govern, if we want to use this? No, it's not very good. But how do we want to navigate in this future? What? So we can take the rule, or we can take the wisdom. How can we access the wisdom? So, Nam-myoho Renge Kyo that you read back there is, essentially the methodology. So the concept is that the truth is accessible, but it's not accessible in a purely rational way. You need to access that depth, that mystical part of life that, according to this tradition, can be accessed by meditation, and the meditation of the chanting of the Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, which is the title of the Lotus Sutra, which supposedly contains every single meaning, which is the supreme dignity of life. So basically, the chanting is about the beauty of life, individual life, and everyone and everything life, if you want to say it like that. So the point, I think, and I want to take just to finish off my. So it's obviously it's impossible to talk about the religious tradition in few minutes, but I hope that you could see how the focus is in what can we do. That's the main, truly. The spiritual tradition, the religious approach to life is what can we really do? That's why, and the point, I think it's very relevant for certainly for Buddhism. I think for every single religion, despite of the beautiful messages that are at the bottom of, I think, any single religion that exists on earth, a human being have been able to create, and the truth is that religions, hardly, can be seen by common people as really progressive. They are perceived like, and you can see that in many cases, war are made in that. So I think the question is, can we really recuperate what religions can do? And I think this is a serious question. So I think I thank this panel because we can argument about this, and I think we can. Yes, I think spirituality is such an inherent part of human beings that, and religions have, conveyed that need into different narratives. Now the point is, we clearly have to be fast in answering a fast-changing world. The future that we are designing is transforming very fast. So maybe for the first time in history, we can use this need to be fast to focusing, instead of the differences, on what we share. Because we need alliances. We don't need to really, focusing on what is the difference between, but we clearly have an attention to human dignity, to human values. So we can build on that, and you can read there, finish off on this. I'm not gonna read that, but you can if you want. The message of Daisaku who's been the last president of Soka Gakkai, which is exactly about this, just thinking and hoping and wishing for a fellowship of religions for humanity. That, I think, can be achievable, and probably it can be a fantastic force that will help the future to be better than it could be. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Giordano, and especially this last point that you made about the importance of walking together and building alliances, and we'll certainly come back to that after. We want to now turn to our next speaker, who is one of the young, the emerging scholars. Her name is Dr. Anna Maria Ganev, and she is a doctoral researcher in bioethics at the Pontifical Athenaeum Regina Apostolorum. And her work focuses on the ethical use of psychedelics in clinical and non-clinical context. And she's an associate researcher with the UNESCO chair, specializing in neurobioethics and emerging technologies. And her topic today is very interesting, especially to hear from a young scholar, cultivating wisdom, bioethics between scientific rigor and spiritual depth.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm sorry, but I will not be talking about my thesis. Still too controversial of a topic. But let me just begin by saying how much I enjoyed all your presentations from this morning and also from yesterday. You brought a lot of valuable perspectives and also different perspectives, like kind of pieces of a puzzle, in order for us to collectively understand what it takes to be human. Let me start with a line that feels uncomfortably contemporary, even though it was written almost a century ago. Where is the wisdom we have lost in knowledge? Where is the knowledge we have lost in information? We are living in an age of engineered life and translational medicine, so an age where we can sequence, edit, predict, and intervene in the body with unprecedented precision. And yet, in the midst of all of that precision, we can lose wisdom, the capacity to judge well what ought to be done, for whom and at what cost. Today, I want to ask a focused question: can bioethics genuinely mediate the tension between scientific rigor and spiritual depth so that we can form wisdom rather than slogans or ideology. So I come to this question not as a distant observer, but as someone who has lived it and is still living it. Trained as a pharmacist, now doing a PhD at a Pontifical Athenaeum, and I'm working as a researcher in bioethics. So this particular position between a scientific background and also a pontifical faculty is, I think, a privileged one. So it forces to hold these two worlds in tension, and I will argue is not a problem to be solved, but a condition to be inhabited. So the tension I'm describing is not new. Bioethics has always been caught between two legitimate demands. So on the one side, the scientific or technical rigor, so the obligation to understand what is actually happening in the human body when medicine acts upon it, like genomics, organ transplantation, synthetic biology, artificial intelligence in diagnosis. So these are not abstractions, they are interventions in real human lives, and any serious bioethicist must be able to understand them on their own terms. On the other side, there is the spiritual wisdom, so the tradition of asking not only what is being done to the body, but who is the person whose body this is. So a person with a history, with a relationship, with a dignity that no scan can fully capture and no algorithm can quantify. So these are the twin poles, the quid est homo, what biological investigation reveals, and the qui est homo, who this person is as an irreducible mystery. So here is the distinctive challenge that this panel also inhabits. So, and that also ecclesial institutions face acutely. How do we honor both the revelatory power of scientific discovery and also the theological conviction that human dignity transcends biological description without sacrificing either to the other? So this brings me to the core argument I want to make today. Authentic bioethics education must form judgment and cultivate wisdom, not transmit doctrine or ideology. So that sounds simple, but in practice is genuinely difficult, because these are two very tempting failures modes that institutions fall into. So the first is the ideological approach, the predetermining outcomes and using science to confirm conclusions already reached on other grounds. This is not bioethics, it is a kind of apologetics dressed in the language of ethics. So the risk is to become advocates for positions and not thinkers capable of navigating new situations. The second is the purely secular approach, which in its anxiety to appear neutral brackets out the spiritual and religious insights entirely, as if wisdom traditions had nothing to contribute to questions about human dignity, suffering, and death. So this produces a kind of ethical technocracy. It's rigorous but thin. So both approaches fail, and the question is what a genuinely formative bioethics education looks like instead. So I want to be precise about what I mean by wisdom, because the word is often used loosely. So knowledge is the mastery of facts, knowing what the science says, what the doctrine teaches, what the law requires, necessary but not sufficient. You can know everything about a medical procedure and still be unable to make a sound judgment about whether this patient in this situation should undergo it. Reasoning instead is logical consistency, so the capacity to work arguments through to their valid conclusions. It's also necessary but also insufficient, because arguments can be formally valid and morally catastrophic. So reasoning without wisdom produces what Aristotle would recognize as cleverness without judgment. Wisdom instead, or phronesis in Aristotle's account, is something different, is practical discernment. So it is this capacity to hold multiple forms of knowledge simultaneously. So to recognize their distinct contributions and their distinct limits, and to exercise, let's say, a sound judgment in particular situations. So it is practical, it is integrative, and it is irreducibly complex. So this is what bioethics education should be cultivating: not more knowledge, not sharper arguments, but judgment and discernment. So why is bioethics uniquely positioned to cultivate this wisdom? Well, because it was born as an interdisciplinary field. So from its earliest moments, bioethics brought together philosophers, clinicians, theologians, lawyers, social scientists, and patients. So that heterogeneity is its constitutive strength. And it is what makes bioethics the natural home of this kind of wisdom that I've been describing. So the ability to hold empirical knowledge and spiritual insight in creative tension. Before getting to some final insights and conclusions, I just want to name the context in which bioethics and spirituality are being asked to operate, because the context is working against them. Three forces are converging. So velocity and speed, medicine accelerates, genomic data multiplies, clinical decisions compress. So the time available for careful ethical reasoning shrinks precisely as the stakes rise. So we are making faster decisions about more consequential things. There is also this need for certainty. So complexity is highly uncomfortable. So human beings reach for clever answers, even especially in situations that have none. So we mistake gray areas for failures of thinking, but they are not, because the gray areas are the territory of ethical life. So learning to stay in them, to sit with uncertainty without collapsing it prematurely, is one of the hardest things to teach, and one of the most important. So also the fact that AI, especially chatbots, are viewed as a kind of oracle of Delphi. So people are already asking these chatbots for moral guidance, not only for companionship, but also seeking advice or also psychological help. So they ask questions like, should I continue this treatment? Is this procedure right for me? What should I do? And the answers come back instantly, fluently, and confidently. And they are a category error, because we cannot outsource conscience to an algorithm, and an AI can describe ethical frameworks, but it cannot be formed by them. It cannot suffer the consequences of a wrong judgment, and it has no skin in the game. The objection is not that the AI is useless for bioethics. The objection is that wisdom requires formation, and formation requires stakes, time, and the capacity to suffer the consequences of a wrong judgment. So an AI has none of this. Consulting it for moral guidance is like asking a mirror for advice. The mirror is very responsive, but it has no interest beyond reflecting you back to yourself. So this is why both spirituality and bioethics matter now, and not only academically, because both are disciplines of learned complexity. So both take time, real time, even years to master. Both resist shortcuts, both require you to sit with difficulty rather than dissolve it. In the science of life, you reach a point where data alone are not enough. You need a moral compass, and that compass could not be an app. So let me conclude with some insights. I would like to name three things that we share. We share the conviction that spirituality is not a supplement to bioethics. So it reframes what bioethics is from optimizing outcomes to accompanying persons. So we do share also a mutual obligation. Religious institutions must engage science honestly without subordinating it to predetermined theology. And also secular institutions must take spiritual insights seriously without dismissing it as a mere preference. And also the risk that we share any tradition, spiritual or secular, can harden into ideology, so predetermining answers rather than forming this capacity for wise judgment. So our shared task, I'd like to suggest, is to keep the question open. So bioethics is not a referee between science and spirit, it is the space where wisdom is formed together. So let me just close with what I think this means practically. So first, we must form, not indoctrinate. So the goal of bioethics education is not to produce people who have the right answers. It's to produce people capable of asking the right questions. So people who can sit with this complexity, as said before, who can hold tension without collapsing it prematurely, and who can act with both rigor and compassion in situations that no formula can resolve. So the second is that we must honor both these questions. So quid est homo and qui est homo belong together. And the third conclusion is that wisdom is the goal. So no doctrinal fidelity, no secular neutrality, but the formation of people capable of wise, compassionate, rigorous judgment in real situations. So situations that are always more complex than our theories, so always more human than our categories. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Anna Maria. And now we'll move on to our final speaker today, Father Tullio Proserpio, who is a priest of the Archdiocese of Milan and chaplain at the National Cancer Institute of Milan, where he's lived and worked since 2003. He's done extensive research in the area of spirituality and palliative care, and he's a consultant in palliative care for the Pontifical Academy for Life and also for the Lombardian Bishops' Conference. He's the founder and editor of the website Spiritual Care. So we look forward to hearing from you now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for this invitation. I want to share my reflection and also my experience in the hospital, you know. And so, okay. Go ahead. The ancient question, quid est homo, vis est homo, acquire new urgency in an era where biotechnologies, genome editing, and artificial intelligence increasingly shape the conditions of human life. Medicine today can not only treat diseases but intervene in the biological foundations of life itself. AI systems can support and sometimes substitute human decision-making. But as our power to modify life grows, so does the ethical question, who is the person whose life is being modified? Asking what is the human being is no longer enough. We must ask, who is this concrete, vulnerable, relational person whose existence is touched by our technologies? To avoid reductionism, we need an integral anthropological perspective that includes scientific, ethical, relational, and spiritual dimensions. This is not merely a religious request. The World Health Assembly has recognized the spiritual dimension as part of global health policies. The life sciences now allow intervention once unimaginable. Technologies such as CRISPR-Cas9 enable target genome editing, yet concern about off-target effects and mosaicism explain why many ethics committees and international bodies still consider germline editing for reproductive purpose ethically unjustifiable. The WHO governance framework calls for prudence, transparency, and multi-lead oversight. Artificial intelligence in transforming diagnostics and clinical decision-making. The WHO highlights well-known risks, algorithmic biases, opacity, inequality of access, and erosion of human centrality. For this reason, it demands governance rooted in human rights, safety, and accountability. More recently, WHO guidelines on large multimodal models emphasize the danger of automation bias, the risk that clinicians may delegate too much to machines, and call for fair, inclusive safeguards. Thus, the core ethical question becomes not only what can we do, but what ought we to do. The deepest risk is not theological failure, but anthropological distortion, reducing the human being to a biological system to be optimized or to a data set to be processed. When this occurs, medicine does not merely change its tools, it changes its image of the person. In clinical practice, particularly in oncology, there is a dimension that no technology can eliminate: vulnerability. Patients do not ask only about treatment protocols or survival curves. They also ask, who am I now that illness has changed my body? Am I still myself if I can no longer control what lies ahead? Here the spiritual dimension emerges, not as a doctrinal concept, but as the space where meaning, identity, and hope are reconfigured in the face of fragility. The WHO affirms that the suffering is multidimensional, physical, psychological, social, and spiritual, and considers palliative care an ethical obligation for health systems. The APC has developed tools to help clinicians identify spiritual needs related to meaning, purpose, and transcendence. Recent research shows that spiritual care interventions, such as dignity therapy and structured life review, can improve spiritual well-being and reduce emotional distress. This data confirm that spiritual care is not optional. It's essential to truly holistic care. Hope as relational good. Empirical study in oncology, including our own, shows that relationships are decisive for sustaining hope. Contemporary ethics also emphasizes that authentic hope must be oriented toward realistic and humanizing aims, avoiding both illusion and premature despairs. Hope is not the denial of limits, it's the capacity to inhabit limits without being crushed by them. Hope flourishes when patients experience that they are not reduced to their diagnosis. Thus, hope is best understood as relational good. It arises in encounters, in trust, in presence, in relationships with caregivers, loved ones, and when meaningful to the person, with God. Listening, therefore, is not a technique, but a form of accompaniment. It sustains dignity and restores agency, even when the medicine can no longer alter the course of illness. If we speak of engineering life, we must ask, what vision of the human person guides this project? Responsibility ethics rests on few pillars. First of all, scientific rigor and governance. Aligned with WHO AI guidance and WHO Athenaeum guidelines, medicine must adopt transparent and accountable framework that prioritize safety, no maleficence and justice. Second, human dignity and relationality. Care is not only intervention on the body, but relationship with a person. UNESCO's recommendation on the ethics of AI place dignity, human rights, and meaningful human oversight as an essential principle. Third, anthropological and spiritual awareness. Spiritual care, when integrated appropriately into clinical pathways, improves subjective well-being and reinforces person-centered care. Technological progress expands what is possible. Anthropological and spiritual insight asks, toward what kind of humanity is this progress oriented? If the human being is seen only as a biological organism to be optimized, then the engineering life risks becoming a purely technical endeavor. If instead we see the human being as relational, vulnerable, and meaning-seeking, then engineering life becomes a profoundly ethical and spiritual undertaking. The real danger is ethical techno-reductionism, where the question what is possible begins to replace what is good for the human person. What's happened? Okay. And so, quid est homo remains the compass of ethical reflection, but quis est homo, who is this person, grounds ethics in encounter. The engineering life responsibly means of safeguarding the space where dignity, meaning, and hope can flourish. Clinical experience, supported by growing research, teaches that hope is born and sustained in relationship. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And especially what I found interesting was how you talked about, vulnerability and the spiritual dimension and how to bring hope in this situation. So we do have a little bit of time for discussion, and we would first of all like to open it up to the audience here. If anyone has any questions or comments to make, we'd like to begin with you. Yes. We have a few.
Thank you very much. It was very interesting. One thing I noticed is that I work with young talents working in audiovisual art creation and cinema all over the world, and it's literally hundreds of them. 5-6 years ago, if we would speak about spirituality, everyone would turn away and leave the room. Now it's one of the most pressing issues. So that's the good news, but there are bad news, which is literally none of them, but not one out of 100, rely back to any form of formed religion, And so it was very interesting to hear what Anna Maria Ganev was saying, is like this kind of balance between there is something there that will allow me to have a better vision, a more profound vision of things, but still I can't enter this preformatted religion, although they hold wisdom. So how can this interaction come? Guido Giordano underlined this kind of phenomenon. There is this urge, but there is it seems like there is a problem of breach of conversation. So do you feel that? Do you feel this opportunity, this relevant, important moment, and this difficulty in having this conversation?
I just want, I think it's very interesting because I have the same observation. There's a lot of talk about need of spirituality in, for example, very creative professions, especially artists. I would not say that there's no reference to religion. I would say, I would rather call it like a secularization of second order, that finally, there's a lot of references to religion, to the chiffres of religion, but it is not in a very ordinary way, like referring to a very theological education or terms. But if you look at many phenomena today, like apocalyptic talks, like spirituality, community, etc., I think they are they are readdressing the same chiffres that had been addressed also by religious institutions and organizations for centuries, but it is just not that obvious, and it isn't just in a more immediate way. But I think the phenomenon is quite similar. The question is then why organized theology, for example, or religion cannot respond to these needs.
Yes. I'd like to, let's say, mention also this phenomenon of young adult men or boys that are actually, let's say, church shopping. It's called this phenomenon. So they try to find which church or religious institution resonates with their values, gives them kind of framework or some principles with which they could live. So I do see that in young people, especially men, there is this research on not only spirituality but also to be part of a community, so part of a religious institution. As for example, I'd like also to point out the owners of big tech companies as well. Once they've done all that was technically possible, they do find themselves that they need a kind of anthropological or philosophical grounding, and they are seeking kind of a moral compass. They are asking finally why I'm doing all this. One emblematic case may be Brian Johnson, which wants to be immortal. There is also a documentary on Netflix. It's called Don't Die. So he's sure that using technology and all that, it's technically possible. He will achieve immortality and will live forever. But recently he also have been asking kind of questions, why am I doing all this? So what's the purpose of it all?
Yeah, just very quickly, thank you very much for the comment. I think there's a Buddhist state that say, if you want to know what's going on now, look at the causes that you placed in the past. But if you want to know what happens in the future, look at the causes you place now. So I think, established religions still hold, the keys, let's say. But obviously, for the past, not discussing, they've lost some sort of appeal to what is needed now. So I think instead of okay, the past is gone, so let's focus on the future. We need to find, I think, ways to really be up to date. And, for example, maybe later, I don't know, Professor Carrozza, while we were on the coffee break, she was saying after their presentation on education, there are key actions that needs to be done, and that requires the presence of established religion to be, successful. Now, if this is done quickly, then established religion can regain appeal, because they would look like those that really take on what are the spirituality needs of the present day. If they do not do that, then I think we are losing a great opportunity, and also I think it would be a loss for humanity in general.
I also would like to add something. It's astonishing, but one of the most important drug is the placebo. If you are giving a cup of water, suggesting that is the real treatment for you, this will be the proper medication for you, not for the other, for you. This is associated to a very profound biological effect, not a biological effect, at least for certain time. This is something who teach us also that by the perception, by the conviction, we can try to cover the disease and to face the disease. And when we speak of the importance of hope, in the house of cancer, cancer was associated with the idea of death. This was in the past. Now it's no more such. Now it's no more such. You can also save from many of them. But it's important to open the dialogue. We know that we will die, all of us will die. It's written in our genes. We cannot survive. At the end, the life will be terminated. And this is a black hole. We don't know nothing as certitude, but the religion open you the hope, not to die, but to transform yourself, to go on from that form of perception, which is measured by our capacity, to another state. This is something fundamental to face the disease and to face the death. And I think that this is associated to the need of spirituality. Most of the totally convinced athei who don't believe in any kind of religion of God until a certain moment. But they one day have the perception that is approaching the end of this form of life. They are looking to themselves to come back again to the possibility, not to believe in one or on the other, but to the possibility that this is really truth, as you were mentioning, as a transformation, and then this is a continuum. This is something who have profound effects on the humans.
If you answer. Okay, I am very happy to receive this news. It's not particular news in my experience. Why? Because the spirituality is the meaning of life. I'm very surprised that for young people this question is open. And also I think give for me, I'm a priest of course, a great question in which way we can speak about gospel, for example. And also today I think the idea, if I go in the Christian, Muslim or Jewish view, I'm not free. And for this reason I prefer stay away without problem. Okay, and after everyone can choose what is better for him without problem. Our responsibility is stay with the patients, with him, with her, working with them. In which way, I don't know. Arrive where, I don't know. Most important is stay together and work by work, go ahead after, I don't know. I believe, of course, my way, his way, her way is always a place with the love, the face of God, everywhere, in every situation. This is the best for me.
I see we have a few more questions, so here and there.
Thank you. One for Anne-Marie. I don't know if I can put it this way, but you mentioned AI as source of new source for spirituality. As we know, young people today, those that have mental health problems, they are looking for chat booths and not for psychologists. I know that. Well, I just know this about Brazil. I don't know if they exist in other parts of the world. But in Brazil, there are some chatbots that are a kind of reincarnation of Jesus Christ. So all really, yes, I was astonished as you are. So they put in this intelligence system all the information about Jesus, and now people can address their own questions from daily life to this kind of chat booth. And how would Jesus today answered to us. So this is happening, really. So this was perhaps a comment, not really a question.
Okay,
And
thank you.
a question to all of the others. It was raised by Amir. Spiritual assistance in hospitals. You mentioned kind of two models, very religious-oriented or broader. Can't we have both? I mean, a broader one for all the patients, and upon request, have a more religious-driven spiritual assistance?
Yeah, I think it's being in this sense of complementarity. I think it's the most rational and beneficial also to all parties. But reality in hospitals shows a little bit different. There's a struggle for means, also for access, and you need to cultivate such kind of thinking in order to create this beneficial moment. And there is a certain fear that a religious chaplaincy becomes tamed by a certain kind of institutional efficiency thinking, so outcome-oriented chaplaincy that that fits into a biosphere which is ruled by efficiency as the main way of thinking. And then many chaplains say this is not what we understand as doing chaplaincy, and just disrupting with these kinds of logics. So I think also one main asset of theological approach is to resist and disrupt with certain kind of logics, functionings that are very based on functioning efficiency and so on. And I think this asset needs to be maintained also.
Thank you. We have one more question here before we break.
Following on the previous comment, it does happen in very wide scale. Large language models currently are consultants on anything. So, on information, on science, on health, on dating, on movies, on mental health, and spirituality. And this can happen in many different ways. Practically, we have to acknowledge that they absorb every piece of information that can reach online in real time. So any information that is a footprint of spirituality considerations or has some reflection of spirituality will be there. And if someone wants to seek that information, he will get it along with counseling if counseling is what they ask for the chat box. And I wanted to hear, since we had these very wise and complementary insights from different religious perspectives, these religious perspectives, do they encourage this type of, let's say, artificial life, generative artificial intelligence counseling on spirituality? Do they feel suspicious about it? Do they want to decrease it? Do they want to strengthen it? Do they want to ban it? I don't know. There's many options. And at a second level, I think most religions, and please correct me, I may be completely wrong about that, their higher level spiritualities tend to encompass phenotypes that focus more on lived experience, inner life, clearly not show off, clearly not be so communicative and talkative and like being an Instagram influencer about your spirituality. So most likely the spirituality that spills over, other than the classic texts of mystics and figures who have written very deep texts, is very shallow spirituality. I think that the real high levels of spirituality are missing from that training corpus that may feed into the consultation. Is that a concern, that people may be fed very low level like fast food spirituality in a sense.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Yes, I would like to tell you that independently from my religion, but the figure of Francis in the empty St. Peter place for Easter was something who rose the needs of spirituality in the world, independently from the religion. Women, we have that needs at the end of ourselves, independently, to have the touch of spirituality. What I regret is now the approach to the school, the dominance of the media, the dominance of the iPhone and the telephone in comparison to the past. It was too rapid. It was too rapid, this change. To give the possibility, this is a doubt that I have, to the family to put the semen of spirituality in the young children. They come back when they start with adolescence. They have the sensation that something is also outside their hormones and outside themselves. But if you go in the past, we had the time inside to the family, and when we to move to the school, but also spirituality was part of the education given to the child. Now the modern society, in most of the places, we have lost, we have diminished that opportunity.
Yes, briefly.
No, you go first.
Brief comments.
Yes, about chatbots. There is actually a kind of Catholic engine, answering engine. It's a kind of a chatbot. It's called Magisterium AI. So it was fed with all the religious Catholic texts, so the Bible, the scriptures, and so on. So people can look for some information for specific texts or parables or things like that, but not yet for spiritual or moral guidance. So you cannot, I mean, you can ask, but still it will not give you an answer about what should you do and what you should believe. But, I mean, there already exists for the Catholic reality.
Yeah, just very quickly, it's a very interesting question, and it's actually, you know, requires a very in-depth reasoning. I think the core, I got no, you know, I can have personal feeling, but in general, I think the critical part is what Anna Maria was saying. What is wisdom? That's the point, because the point, what spiritualities and religious can offer to these, to the problem is wisdom, access to wisdom, and the critical part is that how can you access to wisdom? Do you access to wisdom through a chatbot? That's the problem, because you cannot teach spirituality by, you know, spirituality needs some kind of access to an inner part. So if this is, you know, if this is clear, then the strategies, the methodologies, the approaches that can be accessed can be, you know, wisely approached, instead of providing rules to say this is wrong, this is, because the rules are always, you know, not very good. But, you know, wisdom, rising wisdom would allow to select the most appropriate ways to, you know, interact with that part, I think.
This conversation could go on for much longer, but we've been asked to end now so that we could have a few announcements. So thank you to all the members of our panel here for this discussion.